welcome to Moral Side of the News, our weekly discussion of today's top stories from a moral, ethical, and religious point of view. I'm Sean Kalin with the WHAS Crusade for Children, and I'm joined today, as always, by a distinguished panel of local religious leaders. Father Bill Hammer, St. Margaret Mary and St. William Catholic Churches, Reverend Michelle Penix, Lighthouse Christian Church, Reverend Harriet Akins Bandman, New Albany Centenary United Methodist Church, Rabbi Stan Miles, Louisville Melton School, and Deacon Greg Gitcher, St. Patrick Catholic Church. We begin this week with the violent events that took place a week ago Friday, leaving a family traumatized and the community angry.
He was waiting for them to get the money out of the bank is when he stabbed her in the stomach.
Terror near Oxmoor Mall on Friday. Police searched for hours for a man who allegedly kidnapped 3 people and took them to rob a bank.
Please don't hurt me. Please do not do anything to my children. Please don't hurt me. Brandon
Strong said it was his wife and 2 kids who were kidnapped. His wife had to have surgery for a non-life-threatening stab wound. 32-year-old Armand Langford was arrested around 6 p.m. near the Best Buy by the Waterson Expressway. Langford was released early from custody almost 1 year ago for committing a string of very similar crimes. He was sentenced to 14 years in prison in February 2024. But after serving just 5 months at a halfway house where he could get treatment, Judge Jessica Green granted him shock probation. That's the argument that a person has been so shocked by their short time in prison that they will not reoffend.
Obviously, the judge felt extremely concerned that she needed to put some protections in place.
Carl Price is a former prosecutor and current defense attorney who looked over Langford's shock probation order with me. Green didn't just cut Langford loose into the community. Her order had 17 conditions, including that he get outpatient counseling and be placed on the highest level of probation supervision. This means his probation officer could have requested to meet with him and report back to the court twice a week. Many people are blaming Judge Green, including Metro Councilman Anthony Piagentini, who said he will attempt to get her impeached for giving Langford shock probation.
Really 2 parts to this story: the violent nature of the crime. You have home invasion, kidnapping, adult and children kidnapped, bank robbery, the stabbing of the mother, and the fact that it should have never happened. The accused should have been behind bars. Why was he out? The community's outraged at the judge that gave him shock probation. So I turn it over to you for this discussion on this topic. It's really had the community talking for the past week.
I was prepared to come in and just get on the judge's case. But with the data that you sent us to study, Sean, I think that the judge is almost as much a victim as the mother and children, because she did her due diligence, not countenancing or thinking that there could be such a breakdown in the system that put this person back on the street again, and did not beforehand give him the help to turn himself around, give him that direction. Not at all. I mean, she did her best. I think I'm rather distressed with what the councilman did, because I think that he was just grandstanding.
Well, and I think first, as always, our heart goes out to the family, the victim of this terrible crime. I think the words used in the story were terrorizing and how fearful, and, I could only imagine that is your worst case scenario, to be at home with your children and have somebody come in and use a knife. At the same time, I think it causes us to stop and look at a couple of different issues, one being just the state of our criminal justice system altogether. I think that the point you bring up about the judge and what she did is absolutely valid. I think that I'm reminded in the Bible where it tells us who builds a tower without considering the cost first. And I think our criminal justice system has expanded so much that very often all of the pieces are not there to be supportive of the way we want it to be. 17 conditions from a judge means that we needed a lot of people involved to make sure that this man did not slip through the cracks and reoffend. And it looks like the piece that was missing had to do with the conditions of his parole. I read in the article as well, or in the story, about even saying he had to agree to follow by the rules of his mom, which kind of tells me that, you know, she had voiced concerns about her son and his mental health or condition. And you know, there, by the grace of God, I think goes all of us who have ever raised children at some point or time. So I think it calls that into play. But then also I think, you know, we always have to be careful with our council leaders, all leadership, and just slow to react, quick to listen, slow to react, not just to say immediately, this is what needs to happen. Take a chill pill, as the kids are used to. I'm not that cool anymore. But, you know, step back, think about the whole case, listen, and then make a determination.
Well, we probably don't have the whole case, obviously, in front of us right this minute. But I do hope that there'll be a review, and particularly what was going on with the meeting with the probation officer, what was going on with the meetings with the mom, what was going on the week before all this happened. Because I don't think he woke up that morning and chose to do what he did. I'm sure there was a whole progression and breakdown that was happening. And why wasn't that picked up on in the system that's supposed to be in place? And that's the review that I'm waiting for. Part of the perspective I bring is that this was on my turf. The bank was robbed literally diagonally across the street from our church. And I was commenting to you when we were showing the pictures on there, the big full-length picture of him walking, that's our property. That picture was taken by our cameras on our church. And we were cooperating with the police as much as we can because they immediately came to our property and had us go into a lockdown. So we were also very scared. We immediately began searching our cameras, found him, and actually helped the police considerably because it shows he was going across our property. He exited into the neighborhood. We did that through the place where I live. He went through my backyard to go into the neighborhood. He walked right through our property and in my backyard and then goes to the neighborhood. So he knew where to start looking in the neighborhood based on our cameras. And we were having to shut our whole campus down. People were pulling onto our property to go to church. We had to say, please, stay in your car, please go back, come back later. It's not safe right now. So we went through that experience. And not the same as the woman and her kids. I don't want to anywhere say that. But I'm just saying it's very real what happened when that breakdown happened and the potential impact. Because what if he had broken into one of our windows? What if he had broken into our building as he was escaping? You know, those kind of things start going through all our minds. So I really want to know what was going on week or 2 weeks before this happened in his life. That's the question I have. It's still out there. Yeah.
I think the several sides of this story, being former police and now half cop, half clergy, I think the officers did a great job responding quickly.
Absolutely, yes. I want to affirm that. They were on our property, bunch of the cars, bunch of officers, and in the neighborhood. We had 14, 15 cars in our neighborhood at one time.
Yeah, it was an amazing response. And as a police chaplain for 5 departments, I'm with these officers constantly throughout the year. You know, one of our big concerns, as police would say, is that, okay, if he got 14 years to serve and he was let out, was it 5 months? Is that what I hear? Wow, that's more than shock probation. That's really getting people out early and not holding them responsible. Understand, before this event, he had 22 different victims. 22 victims separately in armed robberies, kidnapping, and whatever, assault. So, you know, I think you have to look at the past record and not just this one case. But, you know, he has a history of doing this, and he hasn't been cured. And, you know, we all love our mamas, and we listen to her. We try to listen to him, but I don't think she was going to have that big of an effect on him when he's in his mid-30s, I believe it was, right? So the probation and pro officers that I have worked with throughout my 30-plus years, they are overrun with cases. It's kind of like defense attorneys. They get this many cases they got to work in a week, and they can't spend all the time they need to spend. I'm not making excuses for his parole or probation officer, but I think it's very hard. It's easy for the judge to say monitor him, but can they actually do that if they have a very large caseload? I think that shock probation should be examined. We have to consider the victims involved here, the past victims, and now the brand new victims, before we shock probate somebody. That's just my opinion.
Well, and just for a point of clarity, he was in jail for 2 years from the time he was arrested in November of 2021 or 22 until he went before the judge again in February of 2024. So he had served some time. But I think you're absolutely right, and that's why I brought up the case about Scripture where it says, before you build a tower, consider the cost. We have to support those members of the system that are in charge of making sure the judge's orders are carried out from the top to the bottom. And, as someone who's, I have a summer camp after school program right beside the parole office or correctional department here in the city. And I see people going in there all the time, and I see the parole officers, if you will, going in and how overrun they are and how much time, that they have with these people who have been who have committed these crimes. So I think we really need to. I wish we could just slow down. Don't you always like? No matter what happens, can we stop and reevaluate? Where are our money? Where are our funds going? How can we be of most assistance? And how can we make sure the system we set up actually works?
And how can we make the system healthier without then getting distracted of pointing fingers at, oh, that was your job or you're the fault? Where are the links that are weakened and how we shore them up? Because what happened to that family, and also to you, Father Bill, and your church family, is that fear grabs fear. And so now that fear spreads, and so we suddenly feel so frightened to be out and about. And so how do we reclaim that feeling of safety and working to make our systems work for us and work better, and giving those who do these hard jobs in the world, like probation officers, give them that which is most needed?
I see also another problem. What is being done not only for the mother and the children, who I cannot imagine the level of their PTSD, but also the 22 people who were assaulted by this guy prior to the shock probation. When he was let out, did they have any notice that he was back on the street again? And what is their mental health going to be until there is a resolution of this situation and this perpetrator is no longer on the street?
It's a lot of discussion, and I think House Bill 5 was put in place after, was enacted in the law after, and it would have prevented him from getting out on shock probation, my understanding. So I'm sure the topic will continue to be in the news. And we'll move on to another tragic story that happened just Wednesday of this week, the bus stop shooting that took the life of a young mother on Wednesday.
We're getting another report of a shooting at 930 West Chestnut, 930 West Chestnut. 3 shots fired at the bus stop, 1 person on the ground.
A fatal morning in a West End school zone, 10th and Chestnut.
You don't get through something like this as a young person. This is something that changes you forever.
Police are searching for this suspect who allegedly fired fatal gunshots at a young woman walking to a bus stop with a young child Wednesday morning. LMPD arrested a 15-year-old this morning, but Chief Paul Humphrey said hours later that he was there, but not the shooter.
After that interview, we were able to determine he is not the suspect in this shooting.
Humphrey says the woman died at the hospital and the child was not physically hurt.
This is the second time in a week that we're talking about this. and it is absolutely pathetic.
It's the same area where gunshots were fired on the first day of school. A 15-year-old suspect taken into custody less than a week ago. Both Coleridge Taylor Elementary and Central High School just blocks away.
We had officers out here at the bus stop every morning. Today happened to be the first morning that we did not have officers at this bus stop.
So just unthinkable, the second time in a week at that same bus stop, just 2 blocks from where we're recording this show right now. So your thoughts on this? Ties a lot to the first story, I think, with the violence.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, in listening to the press conference yesterday, there was a community member who lives there who was really frustrated in her response and question to the police chief, saying, you know, the community knew this wasn't over after last week. She said that the community knew that there was an ongoing dispute between some young people and that wasn't the end of it. And she just asked the question again of the systems that we have in place, how come we're not coming together to talk about what the issues are? How come LMPD and the community are not coming together, haven't built those relationships so that we know this is a lingering issue and we're out there for 7 days instead of 6 days, or out there as long as it takes. And that's the part that really goes back to the first part when you talked about, Father Bill, you know, how you felt, and I could hear it in your voice with the robbery last week. And I think about that for the community around there, how they felt seeing that. You know, there's a daycare right there. There's a library right there. There's a high school. There's a church. And the extreme mental toll that takes on those members of the community as well. And the first thing I thought, Father Bill, was, again, scripture, am I my brother's keeper? And one of the things that I'm disappointed by, honestly, in this case is what happened out in your neck of the woods with that robbery, everybody was talking about it on social media. Everybody had something to say. And I think yesterday's case of the school shooting, I did not see that same reaction from the community. I saw a lot of disappointment, a lot of what are we going to do, a lot of hurt and frustration, but I largely saw it coming from the community that was most affected. And I think this is where we have to come together and everybody has to have a voice.
Hurt, yes, but also I cannot imagine the level of fear that people have now of just taking their children to school. Well, can they do that without getting killed? Are their children safe once they walk inside the building? These questions, which not long ago seemed so understandable, have become unfathomable because we shouldn't place communities in fear. They should not be placed in fear. They should be able to function as free adults in a free situation, free people in a free situation.
But these are the same questions we've been asking on this panel and within our communities of faith for how long? That's what I find so frustrating, is that children continue to go to school with the probability that something like this could happen. Now, how much is a little one going to absorb of ABCs and numbers when you're frightened about coming to the building and then going home?
Well, and part of it is, I think, too, that not everybody learns from their past mistakes. Some do, but not everybody does. And the fact is that young children still are getting ample access to guns. Young children have ample access to guns. We haven't learned from that. There are certainly situations where, again, even moving out of that immediate context, but again, when you're driving, you know, road rage, stuff like that, the responses that are happening, that people don't seem to be learning from the past anymore, whereas I know that was one of the things that when I was growing up, you didn't keep repeating the same situations. You're always being checked or checked on or checked out. And that's one of the things I think is part of, again, the cultural context in which you're in right now as well, for lots of reasons. And I don't have an answer. But the observation is that a lot of these, spiraling type situations, there's other people involved, but they're not exercising some of their responsibilities as well.
Mm-hmm. Last week, my husband and I were driving in New Albany, and we were in a neighborhood. We came to a stop sign, and there were 3 little boys playing in the yard. It's so fun to watch children play, right? And then they turned to us, and they all had toy guns, and they all pointed them at us and pretended to shoot us. And the youngest was about 5, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is what they're learning now, and there's no regard from. And there's no understanding of play and reality. And I understand developmentally they're not there. Right. But the fact that there's even the ability to buy a toy gun in which to practice playing with it. Does that make sense? That startled me. And then all these stories come out.
Well, I think a lot of us grew up playing cowboys and Indians and bad guys and robbers with water guns or, whatever. But the society definitely, the gun violence, goes without saying. What we've been really concerned with is the younger people committing these crimes know they won't get much jail time because they're under 18, and organized efforts, aka gangs, are having the younger people commit some of these crimes, knowing that they would get such a light sentence that in many cases, before the officer completes all the paperwork, they're already back out on the street laughing. So something needs to be done, on these very violent, vicious crimes with killing someone or attempting to kill somebody. I think they need to be treated differently too. You just can't say, well, you're under 18, you get to go right back out on the street type of thing, So we see this in cities all over America, by the way. And Louisville's getting, unfortunately, a taste of it now. But these younger people that get guns that are probably stolen out of cars or house burglaries are out committing violent crimes. It's very unfortunate. But the PTSD, as you spoke, Rabbi, is that, the families from across from Oxmoor, the family involved in this bus shooting, the kids around there that saw it, the kids on the bus, that's going to have a long effect on these children. So we need to pray for them.
That's a good segue into the next topic. We'll move quickly to it because we have 6 minutes left in the show. With the federal takeover of the D.C. Police Department this week.
This morning, the nation's capital put on notice, awaiting the arrival of hundreds of National Guard troops as the president places Washington, D.C. under federal control.
This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back.
President Trump declaring a public safety emergency in D.C., placing Attorney General Pam Bondi in charge of the D.C. Metropolitan Police, and activating some 800 National Guard troops. Overnight, the Secretary of Defense saying they'll be ready to act.
They're going to be proactive. If you take an action or a shot at them, there will be a consequence. We're not going to have National Guards sitting there like this, seeing a crime committed and not do something about it.
The Guard is being deployed to assist with law enforcement activities. Guardsmen always have weapons available, according to a U.S. official, but whether they will be armed for these duties is up to their commander. The president is painting an apocalyptic picture of the nation's capital, adamant crime is spiraling out of control. But the official figures show crime in the capital is actually in decline. Violent crime recently hitting a 30-year low. Mayor Muriel Bowser acknowledges there's little she can do. D.C. is not a state, and the president has the authority to take over the city's police department.
And while this action today is unsettling and unprecedented, I can't say that given some of the rhetoric of the past, that we're totally surprised.
Trump, eager to show he's tough on crime, has shown a willingness to use military force in major cities. Earlier this summer, sending 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines to quell immigration protests in Los Angeles. Now he's warning other cities, saying if this model works in Washington, he may use it to fight crime in places like Chicago, Baltimore, and Oakland.
We're not going to lose our cities over this, and this will go further.
So I'd like to start with Deacon Greg. You have a history with the Secret Service in Washington, D.C., so you probably know this a little intimately.
Quickly, I worked there numerous times throughout my 20-plus years. You know, even 25 years ago, it wasn't the safest city in the world. And we would go out in groups at night anyway, but we were able to carry guns, which gave us a little, you know, protection. When I've been there lately, and my friends that say it's not, when they get transferred to Washington, D.C., they don't even want their families coming into Washington, D.C. It's so dangerous. The way that, you know, it's reacting is that there's, and that little thing about what the crime has gone down, I think you'll see real soon in these news stories coming out that the police were fudging those numbers. Now, okay, I'm just giving you a warning. I'll get it on very good sources that they were keeping all the violent crime down and turn it into a lower count assaults so the stats look better. They say Washington, D.C. is worse than some of the worst countries in the world. I can tell you from the 60 countries I worked in, the other countries' capitals are very nice. If you have been to Washington, D.C. lately, you got to be careful where you step off the train on the Metro rail because of people going to the bathroom all over the place. And the crime is terrible. So I think something has to be done. I've never been a Republican or a Democrat, but I think something has to be done, and he's trying to do it.
Well, and if I can say the same, I've never been a Republican or a Democrat myself, and I spend a lot of time in D.C. I have a daughter there. Hi, Grace, if she's watching. And I will tell you that my experience walking around Washington, D.C. is really no different than my experience walking around Louisville, Kentucky, in the Russell neighborhood, in the California community, in the Chickasaw area. I have never felt that there was a safety issue. Now, when I talk to my daughter who lives there, she has experienced crime. She has went to her car in the morning to see that it was broken into, and she's seen, you know, the results in her neighborhood and things like that. What I will say, though, is I think this is a little bit of an overreaction. I think it will absolutely show results because anybody who comes in, we used to say this all the time in education, you know, when there was a new principal who came in and said, I'm going to get test scores up and we're going to turn this around and discipline. It always worked in the short term. It's sustainability that is what we care about, and we want to be able to look forward and know that real change has happened. So I suggest using that $14 million in another way to improve programming for young people in the city. But
quickly, anyone else? 30 seconds.
Are these National Guard soldiers trained and prepared to do police work? Do they know anything what it's like to function as police?
I think they're there just to show it, enforce, you know, if they're not even carrying weapons, as the story indicated, you know, they're just there to support the police doing their job. You know, and if one of these trucks pull up and 4 soldiers get out, you might not want to be breaking any more cars on that block, is what I'm assuming. I think it's just a show of force.
Okay.
Well, one of the interesting things is always that the present party and leadership there has always talked about the importance of allowing local level to handle all things. The federal government should not be intervening, should not be going in, should not be intervening in things that are local, not top down, but let them come from up above. And that's true.
And we'll have to end it there. Thank you, Father Bill Hammer, St. Margaret Mary and St. William Catholic Churches, Reverend Michelle Penix, Lighthouse Christian Church, Reverend Harriet Akins Bamman, New Albany Centenary United Methodist Church, Rabbi Stan Miles, Louisville Mountain School, and Deacon Greg Gitcher, St. Patrick Catholic Church. Thanks. Have a good week. Sorry we ran out of time on a great moral side.